Hello, everyone, and welcome. Yasmin here. And today I'm so excited to kick off 21 Days of Business with my dear friend and colleague, Monica Denais. Monica is a mental health advocate and a therapist for entrepreneurs. And today we're going to be talking about self-care and boundaries as an entrepreneur and as a woman in business. Hi, Monica.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to dive into this. I feel like it's such a it's such a talked a lot about a subject, but I feel like we still have to hear this message over and over until we're able to create the changes for ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And I'm super excited to hear from you based on your work and experience. And I absolutely love following you on social media. You are one of my favorite accounts to follow, actually. Your content is absolute chef's kiss. It's incredible. And Monica has
Thank you
a
so much.
Yes, absolutely. Monica has a podcast called Cafe with Monica, which is also so good. Somewhere on this video, you're going to see her tag. You can follow her, check out her content. But today's conversation, I'm really excited for, and I would love for those that are not familiar with you yet, Monica, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, my name is Monica Denais, and I'm a therapist for women entrepreneurs based in Dallas, Texas. I help women specifically overcome anxiety and perfectionism so they can feel both confident in life and business. And just like you said, I do have a podcast called Cafe with Monica, and I bring other resilient entrepreneurs to discuss topics on mental health, self care, entrepreneurship, and really showing the light that, we can project this idea of like we have it all together. Um, but it's not always the case like that. So being able to share our stories and our entrepreneurship journeys can really help other entrepreneurs feel safe to be vulnerable and to share their experiences. So that's a little bit about me and just kind of the people who I care about and love to work with.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. All right. So tell us, based on your experience, your research, your body of work, where can we do better as entrepreneurs when it comes to taking care of ourselves?
Yeah, I think, I want to dive into like the specific topic of boundaries because a lot of the times when I see clients come in, it is out of a place of I haven't really established the necessary boundaries in order to create that balance for myself. It's imperative that we have that because if not, we are end up feeling drained, depleted, taken advantage of, even feeling victimized because we are giving away our time and energy in ways that don't serve us, right? So as entrepreneurs, we don't think about that part of the emotional skills, the communication skills that are often left on the side. We're so worried about the right funnel, the right email sequence, the right. But what about our emotional skills and our communication skills? Because those are the things that you're going to use it with your team, with any person that you start delegating things with. Maybe they're not part of your team, maybe they're just contractors or clients. When you're starting to reach out to ideal clients, or maybe when you don't get that ideal client, how to respond to them in a way that still feels like okay, genuine to your values, but also sets that boundary like, I'm not going to allow certain things that take my time or energy or make me feel bad. And I think a lot of the times we struggle with that because the thing I hear often is I don't want to hurt people. Like I don't want to hurt someone by putting my boundary. And that's the thing. We can't control someone else's emotions or how they react to our boundary. The only thing that we can control is our own actions and reactions. And oftentimes, when we put that boundary and they don't respect the boundary, it comes with a consequence. And a lot of people are afraid to hold to their consequences. So what happens is we'll set a boundary like I will no longer answer emails past 7 p.m., right? Because that's family time, that's dinner time. So you set that boundary. But here come you have your email on your phone, and here comes a client saying like, "Oh my gosh, like I need you to answer this question right there." It's like a sense of urgency. So you almost feel like, "Oh my gosh, I want to serve this client. Like she's going through something, they're going through something. I need to answer that." So you start answering your emails past 7 p.m. So what this tells that person is it's okay to oh, that boundary that she put, it's not that serious. it's okay because she's going to just like ignore it, And so what happens over time, it's okay if we do it once, but then over time, it brings a wrong message that our time and energy can be interrupted by the outside external world. And so then that creates this need to constantly be on. And so that's just kind of an example of like how someone breaks their boundaries or doesn't have a consequence in place for when people are trying to get into their own time and space that they have, put aside for family, friends, for meantime, whatever necessity that they have in their life or whatever priority they have during that time. And so I find that a lot of the times we don't create these boundaries because of that feeling of guilt that happens after. And guilt is such a normal emotion to feel. It's actually
Oh,
normal for
yeah.
you to feel guilt after. It means you're empathetic about it. You feel, what that impact of what you're doing to that other person. But ultimately, you are putting yourself first because it's going to make you a better, coach, a better therapist, a better business owner, because you are saying like, I am trying to show you that putting these boundaries can ultimately help you have a good balance in your work life. But we forget that as business owners because we wear all the hats. And, I sometimes I envy, people who are 8 to 5 because they do have that like good separation of time. And so when we go into entrepreneurship, we're thinking about our business 24/7. We are constant because we're the ones, whatever we say, whatever risk we take, it's on us, right? If our business doesn't thrive, it's on us. It's on us to take those risks. It's on us to put those boundaries. So we tend to overgive and overcompensate because of that sense of uncertainty, because we ultimately want to gain control. But I think it's our pursuit for control is what actually creates a loss of control, because we're not actually allowing things to happen just like they have to happen. Some things are just like, you can't dictate how something is going to happen, not even a launch. Sometimes there's so much uncertainty. There's a lot of things that you have to sit okay with as a business owner. And so if we don't allow ourselves the space to just be and recognize that our sense of being is just as important as our sense of doing, then we can create this basically this just like strive to constantly be working and go without setting those boundaries. So yeah, I think it's like if we don't set those boundaries, we don't have space for creativity and no space to actually do the work that we want to do. I've seen it so many times with clients that they're like, I lowered my rate. I've seen that. I lowered my rate. And I just like, talk to me about the process. Like, why did you lower your rate? Like, what was happening? Because sometimes it could be a scarcity mentality, right? Maybe we have patterns of our childhood that, we struggled with money. We didn't have enough money. And so now as we sit in our entrepreneur hat, we have those same reactions to people because we just want business. So we lax in our boundary and we don't fight for it. We don't say, oh, you know what? No, this is my rate and this is a reflection of what's going to benefit you. And, here's a smaller package that may fit your budget. Instead, we say, okay, I'll work with you. I'll lower my rate. And then you end up getting in with a client who might not be ideal because since the beginning, they didn't value your price. They didn't value the benefit that you were going to give to them. Instead, what they valued is that you were able to lower it, and so then that creates this pursuit of not having ideal clients, and then you'll feel more drained and all the things. So it's like a spiral. Like if we don't set our boundaries now, it can create all these things that we don't want to happen, and we think
Vicious
that
cycle.
yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. It's not going to help us. Boundaries, it is everything. Like when it comes to doing the work, delegating to a team, being authentic to yourselves. How often do we fall into this trap of not doing what we love, or trying to chase the right strategy in business? And and I find clients like, I'm tired of people telling me this is a strategy for me, this is for that. And because they do not have a sense of self. They do not allow themselves to sit in their emotions and allow themselves to, feel confident in their decision, and knowing that sometimes their decision may lead to making a mistake. But it's those
Mm.
mistakes that are going to allow us to grow and allow us to, take other risks, because we are resilient. So I think a lot of the times we don't recognize that we're constantly seeking for other people to give us the answers that are within us, because nobody's going to have the same patterns of behavior, the same childhood experiences than you. And so your life, the way you do life and the way you do business, is going to look very different from each person. So I always caution people when they're trying to buy a service from another service provider, or a course, that they really sit with it and say, is this what I need at this moment? Or am I just trying to um put a bandage on something that I haven't worked on, right? Like the mindset work, the inner work, right? Because that course might not be the solution, that coach might not be the solution. It might be that you actually
Absolutely.
have to sit with with what happened, all the things, all the patterns, and all the self-sabotage, right? Like, there's patterns there. So yeah, I feel like that was a long-winded answer, but
Also
I think
good.
that the
Also good. Yes.
yeah, so
Also
I think it's like super important for us to understand that boundaries are essential for entrepreneurship.
Oh, boundaries, 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 boundaries. They are our favorite B word over here at Coaches and Company. And if you've been a part of our community for any length of time, then you know this. And for specifically within our company, we strive to make it easy for our customers to communicate those boundaries in the form of, as you know, written contracts, right? But it doesn't stop there. Having it in writing is important. That's step one. But enforcing those boundaries and practicing those boundaries is the next step. And that is something that we hear from our community members on a regular basis, is how do I continue to enforce these boundaries? How do I approach this difficult conversation? Is it simply pointing to the contract? Yes, that's part of it. But do you have any tips for those that are finding themselves having to reinforce and communicate those boundaries to either clients or team members, or maybe it is a spouse or a partner that they're having to communicate those boundaries to and reinforce those boundaries to? So what is my question for you, Monica, is how do we approach these difficult conversations, and do you have any tips for that?
Right. We approach them knowing that it's going to feel wrong. It's going to
Yeah.
feel so uncomfortable. You're probably going to have a lot of emotions about why you shouldn't be entering this conversation, how this conversation is going to go. You will not know how it's going to go. The only thing that can be sure of is how you enter the conversation. So if it's about a contract, maybe it's a client who you've put on your contract that you only take Voxer messages from Monday through Friday from 8 to 3, but that person keeps Voxering after you. You have to also sit with, like, how am I not respecting my boundary? Because it often is like, how are we not respecting it? How can we enforce it if we don't respect it ourselves? So first, think of that, look at that. And that doesn't mean that you can't, just because you don't reinforce it, that doesn't mean you can't have a conversation. I always have that conversation with clients where they're like, well, I don't reinforce it, so now I can't say anything about it. Like, I can't call them out. No, you can. You have to also acknowledge where you did wrong and how you're going to continue to reinforce. And it could be like, I've noticed that, you continuously send me Boxer messages past the time. Is that the time that works best for you? I just want you to know that I typically don't take those messages at that time. So I will always respond to you within and then reinforce the statement in the contract, right? From 8 to, Monday through Friday from 8 to 3, I'm gonna, send those Voxer messages. I have, in the past, messaged you past this time, and it was because it felt like you really needed it. But for me, it's important that I keep these boundaries and I recognize where I did wrong, where I gave you the wrong impression that I would be available. And I think that's important, to recognize where you went wrong in those boundaries, and letting them know, okay, from here on out, if you do not, if you can send me messages past, but just know I will not respond to them until the time stated in the contract moving forward. And so having something like that in place and giving them, consequences. So what happens if you don't answer their Voxer message and they're now emailing you, they're now calling you? Okay, the consequence can be that after a while we're going to end this contract, right? And I love that you even, in all of your contracts you put a way of like, hey, at any point I can terminate this contract at any point if you are not abiding by these rules, by these, standards. I have a choice to break that contract, and you do. There's no amount of money that is going to keep you in a contract. You got to think about your time, your energy, your space, your peace. If it doesn't protect your peace, then it's not good for you in the long run.
It's gotta
So
go.
yeah, it's got to go. And so reinforcing those boundaries with a family member, with a spouse, it's also a saying like, when I put this boundary, like, how did it make you feel? Tell me like what's going on and like what feels hard to respect my boundary. Because you also want to know like, well, I didn't know that was serious, or I didn't know you were doing that, right? They're going to come from a place of maybe you didn't communicate your boundaries, correctly, or in a way that resonated with them. So it's important when we say, okay, well, let's circle back again on this. Like, I need, whether it be a spouse, let's just say you told your spouse, from 8 to 3, I work on my business. And so that means I can't have you knocking on my door, like showing me this TikTok that you want me to see. Like, I need from 8 to 3, I need those boundaries to, like, I need that time and space, or just let me know ahead of time, text me so that I know I can tell you, hey, I'm not available or I am available. Right. It's important that we communicate those things, because also boundaries, they have to change in the season that you're in. It's not just like set in stone. I work from 8 to 3. There are going to be some seasons where you might not have the energy to work during those hours. You might change your hours, and it's okay to communicate those. But you also have to allow the people that you set these boundaries with, that they're going to make mistakes and they might not, reinforce them because they're not as important to them, as they're as important to you. It's going to take time for them to learn that the switch, right? So I always say it's not impossible to change your boundaries, but you have to give grace, to the person as you're communicating new boundaries, as you're reinforcing, as you're telling them what the consequence is. And consequences don't have to be negative. They don't have to be negative consequences. It could be, if you don't, if if you don't answer that email, like if you send me an email, I'm just not going to answer it. I'm just going to answer it the next day. It doesn't have to be like a negative or like I'm going to terminate your contract type of consequence. It could be baby steps towards, the big consequence, the one where like, hey, we're going to cut ties because this is not serving both of us, or hey, it sounds like you need someone who has more of that dedicated time for you, so maybe it is increasing the package, or it's right, like, so there's also a space for you to get value out of your time, right? So if it is the person's constantly sending you emails and they're in a lower package in your coaching program or whatever, then maybe it is, hey, I find you that it sounds like you need more support. And so this is the package that I have you on. This is the package that I think, would serve you best. So let me
I
know.
like that. I like
You
that.
know what
And
I mean? Like
I
it
want
could
to,
go ahead.
oh, thank you. Yes, I want to emphasize something that you mentioned, Monica, because it's so important. And I think it can be something that a lot of people miss the mark on. And that is, we certainly want to respect our own boundaries. We want to honor our own boundaries. And I think in doing so, we respect ourselves and we honor ourselves. And by having others do the same and requesting that others do the same, that in turn is honoring us and respecting us. Here's the key though, is you can't expect others to do so if you fail to communicate those boundaries. And again, you can communicate those boundaries in writing. If it's a professional relationship, having that in a written contract, you can revisit those boundaries and verbalize them during an onboarding call. And then as you work together and as your relationship blossoms and grows and transforms over time, recommunicating those, revisiting those boundaries, checking in with them yourself and with those boundaries that you had set prior, and making sure that they still reflect the boundaries that you wish to have in place right now. And if they are different now, and if things have changed in this season, restructuring them and re-communicating them, because we can't be upset with others, with our clients, with our teammates, with our partners and friends for not respecting our boundaries if we fail to communicate them. Nobody out here is a mind reader, y'all. Nobody is going to be able to read your mind and know what it is that you desire, that you request, that you require in your business and in your life if you do not communicate those things to them. You are in the best position to be your own advocate, and we've got to do so.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with everything you say. And just like with, you work with contracts, like just when you send them a new contract, this is the same thing. Like if you change anything in your contract, you're restating, the new changes. You got to give them time to acknowledge these changes. Because even when you're setting a boundary or changing a boundary, you're changing the terms and conditions. And this person is used to a certain type of level of interaction with you. And so when you're communicating a new boundary or trying to reinforce something that you have not reinforced yourself, it's going to take time for that person to grasp it, right? We're not in the business of cutting people off. We want to work with them. We want to be able to create an environment where both feel safe to communicate things, and then you also have to recognize when maybe they are not in a space where they want to communicate with you, where they want to listen. And that is when we may need to enforce the consequence a little more, right? Whether that be the written contract, reinforcing that again, resending them the contract, making sure that you are organized. Like, I think like when we have an organized space, an organized mind, even when it comes to contracts, that we are able to, and even you revisiting this contract, because sometimes it could feel very easy to like not remember something that you put in a contract and then not reinforcing your boundary, right? When it comes to like working with clients. With family, I always encourage like write down what your values are. What do you value the most? Is it time with family? Is it freedom to be your most authentic self? Is it a value, is achievement, so that your boundaries are actually tied to your values, your goals are tied to your values, because this is going to keep you forcing them, like reinforcing them. Like, that when you are in a space where you spend time with family, you feel good. When you're in a space where you're spending time with your family and you're checking your phone and it's not quality time that you want to spend with your family, then that's going to feel like you're disconnected from your values. You're not going to feel good about it. You're going to feel drained, and it's not going to serve you, your clients, your family.
So good. So important. Oh, absolutely. I think operating from a place of alignment with one's values is, if not the absolute game changer. I mean, in so many different areas of business. We did at a retreat I was at earlier this year, we did a values exercise. My friend, who is also a therapist, Tiffany, she led the exercise, and I think she just Googled list of values, and she pulled up this list that was like 100 values, and just read through the list. All of us that were there, we wrote down the values that were read aloud that resonated with us, that we felt connected to. And at the end, you had a list that was obviously shorter than the original list. And then from there, you select the 5 that you feel are the most important to you. And that really provides you with sort of like a home base, right? Like, let me return to this. When I feel like I'm acting out of alignment, when I feel like there's a disconnect within me and between myself as an individual and my actions, whether it is in life or in business, coming back to that, having that set of values is definitely, I mean, that changes the game for sure, as far as where do we operate from, what is the foundation that I am going to derive these boundaries from, right? You're kind of like, well, I know I want boundaries, I know I need boundaries, but I don't really know where to start or what to do. So do you have any tips for those that are like, I don't even know where to begin when it comes to creating or enforcing boundaries in my life or business?
Yeah, I think and where do you feel the most uncomfortable with, whether that be clients, whether that be family, whether that be yourself, right? Like sometimes it's so hard for us we say that we want to have a morning routine, but yet we don't reinforce the things that we want to do. We say we want to take care of ourselves, but yet we don't do anything to take care of ourselves. So first thing, identify the categories in your life where you find yourself having very uncomfortable emotions. Maybe there's more area, maybe there is more anxiety in that area, because that can be a strong indicator of there there needs to be something there. Our emotions tell us so much. Our body tells us a lot too, right? So recognizing, when do you feel like you're so tired, right? Like at the end of the day, do you just feel super tired? Like spending time with family, does that drain you? Right? That's an indicator, like, oh, guys, something's up. Something is up. With that one client, you don't feel as good, or you constantly feel with that one client, you need to answer their emails. That is a indicator. Well, let me explore that, because there might be some blocks to boundary setting there. And so a therapist can help you, or a coach, right? A coach who is really known in like mindset and boundary setting, can help you identify those blocks, that can, that you need to unpack in order to set those boundaries, because we come with our patterns, our childhood experiences, our patterns, our family dynamics that shape the way we communicate or show emotion, or how sometimes the dynamics, our early experiences, early relationships can dictate how we show up now. So it's important that we recognize those relationships where we find it hard to be ourselves too, right? Like even writing, what is it about me that makes me unique? What is it about me that I love? And in all the areas or all the relationship in my life, am I able to show up that way? Who do I not show up that way with, and why? Like question your motives as to why you don't um, show up authentically as yourself with those people, right? Because that can be an indicator of, wow, these people, there's something about them that I don't feel comfortable sharing their boundary. And maybe they made it where they pushed back. Here's the thing, when we set a boundary, there might be something that we call pushback, meaning someone is not respecting them. Someone's saying like if you say, hey, you hurt my feelings, I really felt hurt by what you said. And they said, oh, I didn't mean it that way. It's a joke. I'm always joking, right? Or I don't know if you heard that like TikTok with, who is it? Kim Kardashian, or is it what's the Courtney Kardashian, and she is telling one of her sisters, like, I just won't say those jokes to you because you don't take them you don't take them as a joke. And we can clearly see there that the person saying like, that's not funny, like that's hurtful, but she is using pushback and saying like, no, maybe you're just taking it the wrong way. And that is where it's a clear identity. We can clearly identify that as pushback. So it's allowing yourself to say, hey, no, I'm not, it's not that I understand, like you say it's a joke, but for me, this is how I'm seeing it. So can we
Mhm.
discuss like how can we compromise, right? Like how can I help you understand how I'm feeling in this moment? And sometimes you're going to continue to have pushback. They continue to give you pushback. That's when you say, okay, then I'm going to need to distance myself from this, because I can't continue engaging in this relationship if you feel like it's not okay to respect that hurts me. And just clearly saying, you're not saying, I don't want to, work on this relationship. You're saying like, I've done everything that I could possibly do. And now it's your turn to decide if you want to respect those boundaries. You don't want to, that's okay. I need to distance myself. And it could be easier with certain people. I know for me, like personally, when I started setting boundaries, it was really hard for family, because I came from a family culture that was very mesh, very we all had, if you didn't think like the same way as everybody else, you were an outsider. And so I had to really explain to my family how things made me feel, or how when they would say something, or if they would, it would be okay for for our family to make jokes about like weight and things like that, and that was not okay with me. So identifying those
Mhm.
things and saying like, it's not okay with me, it makes me feel this way, like I know you're saying this out of maybe a term of endearment, but it doesn't, I don't take it that way. So being very clear about how something makes you feel, and it like in your body, your mind, when you have this uneasy feeling. And so I think if you're starting off, you're waiting, trying to figure out how to create them. First, figure out, how does your body feel with different people in your relationships? How does your body feel when engaging in different sides of your business? And start questioning that. And maybe that's where you can start putting those boundaries in place.
Amazing. I think that's such solid advice, and certainly questioning ourselves as far as, am I doing this for me, or am I doing this to please others? Because I think that's a very common thing that we as women experience in life and business, right? Certainly. And I've had those situations as well that you've described culturally within our family. You know, there are certain things, certain topics, certain jokes that may be acceptable, or maybe they've just been normalized in this context and they need to be called out. And if you're feeling resistance and calling that out, even though it makes you uncomfortable, question that feeling. Why am I feeling that resistance? And is it resistance that is trying to keep me safe from an uncomfortable conversation? Because if so, that uncomfortable conversation just may be the bridge to a better relationship with that person, whether it is your client or your family member. So I really appreciate you touching on that, Monica. And I feel like there's so much that we can unpack in this topic. So I'm sure we'll have you back here to share more of your brilliance with our community. But my final question for you is, what would you like to leave our audience with? What is your big message to entrepreneurs that are looking to take better care of ourselves, that are looking to establish stronger boundaries, to ultimately care for oneself? What is your big message?
I think for me, my biggest message is to create a space for yourself where you feel so connected to your most true, authentic self that you can drop the mask of who you believe you have to be for everyone else and just believe in being your most authentic self. Allowing yourself that you to know and recognize that you deserve you deserve time, you deserve attention, you deserve nourishment. And so saying yes to yourself, whether that be going to therapy or saying yes to that coaching program that is going to help you create those shifts and allow you to recognize your self-worth and value, and knowing that your self-worth and value is completely separate from what you do, right? We are business owners, but we are also beautiful humans who feel, have emotions, make mistakes. And so it's okay to create yourself the time and space and reach out for help, because so many of entrepreneurs don't seek out that help. And that is why entrepreneurs are one of the highest populations that struggle with mental health illnesses. And we don't talk about those things: depression, anxiety, isolation, loneliness, all these things. We don't talk about them. So reach out for help, allow yourself to have the space for another human to hold that space for you, because you deserve it just as much as everybody else.
Thank you so much, Monica. I so appreciate you being here. Where can people connect with you?
Yeah. So people can connect with me on Instagram. It's at Cafe with Monica. You can listen to the podcast. There is really something for everybody. I truly wanted that to be a space where anybody can go in and find the resource, the story for them that can resonate most. And yeah, so if you're in Texas, I would love to work with you. I love working with women entrepreneurs who are people of color. And I'm also having a workshop in December where we specifically help you create and set boundaries for the new year, things that are going to be intentional and resonating with you. We're going to have a Q&A. It's going to be kind of like a coaching style. So I'm really excited for that. This is the first time I'm doing a live workshop with my community.
How
So
exciting.
yeah, so be on the lookout for that. It's going to be tickets will be for the workshop will be on sale in like the last weeks of November, and the
Nice.
live workshop will be that first week of December.
Amazing. Well, we're going to link to everything in the caption/description of this video, depending on where you're watching or listening to this. Again, thank you so much, Monica, for joining me, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.